Hello and welcome to Mountain Technology. Today I will be going over a basic soldering tutorial. Let's get started. Okay, so first we are going to need a soldering iron. We're going to need a wet sponge right here. We are also going to need some wire that we'll be using to actually solder. We're also going to need some wire strippers. I use these scissors here, some solder, and I'm going to be using these handy helpers right here. They're not necessary, but they're just really helpful for holding the wire while you're working on them. Okay, so first we're going to cut a piece of wire. I'll be soldering some red wire, so let's cut some of this off like this. And now we won't need this anymore. Put this off to the side. Always make sure to keep your work area clean while you're soldering so you don't melt or catch anything on fire, since this is a very hot tool right here. So now I'm actually going to cut this in half like this, and now I'm going to strip the wire. So what you want to do is you want to find a little groove that it sits in. On this side there's the gauges. That's the size of the wire. If you know the size of your wire, this is 18 gauge. You can actually find the one on the side that says 18 and you stick it in there, but you could just use trial and error to figure out which one fits it better. So I wrap the wire around my hand like that, and I use my thumb to give it a little tug just like that, and it'll remove this silicone sheathing from the wire just like that. I'm going to do that with this one over here. Wrap it around my hand and then give it a tug just like that. So now we're going to start preparing the wire for soldering. So we're going to see these wires here, the little wires inside, they fray out like that. So what you want to do is you want to pinch it and start rolling the wire in your fingers, and that is going to wrap all these together and keep them straight while we're soldering them so they don't come apart while we're trying to solder them. So we'll do that with this one too. Just give it a little roll in your fingers, and there we go. We have them nice and straight and ready for soldering. So now we are going to prepare the soldering iron for soldering. So we're going to take this. We're going to take some solder here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut a little piece of this off. Put that off to the side. So now we are going to get this piece of solder here. We're going to just melt it onto the end of the soldering iron like that. And now we're just going to wipe it off. So that's going to make sure that we have a nice shiny tip on our soldering iron, which allows it to conduct heat and melt the solder better onto the wire. So now that our soldering iron's ready, we can go ahead and get our wires, and I'll be using these handy helpers again. So I'm going to put one wire in this one and one wire in this one right here. And now for this, we are going to just cross them like this, and then I'm going to bend one over like this way and bend the other one over this way. So this is going to link them like this with the wires. And now you can give it a little twist to tighten it up a bit. Okay, there we go. Now, when we're soldering this, we're not actually going to be melting the solder directly onto the soldering iron like that. We're actually going to be putting the soldering iron under the wires and heating up the wires so that the wire is hot enough to melt the solder. If you don't do this, it won't flow properly onto the wire and might break off or not have a good connection. So after you let this sit for a while, it should start melting onto this wire, but it may take a little bit of time. There we go. So it's starting to melt onto the wire. You see I'm not actually touching the solder to the soldering iron, I'm just touching it to the wire, and the wire's melting it. You'll know it's hot enough when the solder starts melting, but it'll also flow through the wire and kind of spread throughout the whole wire. It'll even actually go into this silicone protective layer here too. So there we go. Once you're done soldering that, you want to wipe it back off on your sponge to get off the excess solder. And we are done. Here is our connection right here. This is a very strong connection and it will conduct electricity very well. Thanks for watching my video. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below.